Welcome to Stampscaping 101. We're going to be stamping on a piece of 5" by 10" piece of semi-gloss cardstock here. I just stamped the river stamp down below, and over the top of it I'm going to build a stack of waterfalls. Kind of represents an area that we used to go hiking at when I was a kid up in the Sierras, when we used to go fishing up there. But my favorite thing was to go hiking, and I really enjoyed this hike up the stream that was up there. Okay, so Babbling Brook has been stamped out, and what I've done, it has a really soft edge to the left and right side because I've wiped off the ink on the left and right side of the image, and I've done the same thing here with the Brook Falls. And then I'm going to stamp the Babbling Brook one more time over the top of the Brook Falls. And again, I've wiped off the left-hand side and the right-hand side with a dry paper towel, removing some of the ink. You don't want to remove every bit of ink, but you just want to remove some of it so you get that nice kind of feathering, kind of transitioning area to the sides, so that when I stamp something like this Pine Island here, I'm just using it for the trees and not to be an island, it'll blend right in to the imagery really very gracefully. I don't do that all the time, but it's something that's really easy to do. See right here, I'm wiping off the bottom of the Pine Island where it transitions into that river stamp, okay? And here I'm stamping that Pine Island off a little bit so that it's drier, and then I wiped it off the bottom, so I get that additional pine tree image. But it looks like it's farther back in the distance because I did it in a lighter tone, okay? Little tweaks like this can make your compositional aspect of your scenes much easier to do, okay? Doing a little bit of masking here with the paper towel, stamping out kind of a lighter impression of those trees, and trying to go for a third impression. It's almost really too light, but those top right-hand trees are supposed to look like they're way off in the distance so that they're nice and kind of a light gray, but it's a black ink, but it's just the third generation of it, third impression using that same inking. Okay, this is a distress ink, antique linen here, and what I'm doing here is I'm coloring, but I'm also coloring and lighting my scene right now. When I'm stamping waterfalls, if they're a fast-moving water, often look kind of white because they're reflecting so much light because there's so much churning water, and it's a real oxygenated water, so it reflects a lot of light. But also just, from a scenic stamping standpoint, if you have kind of a very distinctive visual path for your viewer's eye to follow, and that often means kind of lighter areas within a scene. Could be reflections, I don't know, just illuminated areas. And they're not really, we're not dealing with colored, or lighting. We're working with kind of contrast here. So anything that we've toned in around areas where we retained light look like they're illuminated. So what that means here, with a waterfall scene, I'm trying to leave the water falls and some of the little streams leading up to the falls light, okay? Doesn't mean it has to be the white of the paper. I'll add in some blues later on, but have it kind of lighter like that. And when you do that, you'll get this kind of oscillation of light and dark throughout your scene. And when you do that, the scene comes out a little bit more potentially richer. Things aren't so kind of mono value. Okay, adding a very, very pale application of blue into that water. And that's, again, so I can get a little tinge of blue in there without darkening the water. I want that water to remain nice and light. So I went with this pretty, bright and I wouldn't say dark color of blue, but you can see where I've done that little swirl of blue up there on the white piece of paper. See, I kind of blot it off before I start going on to my paper so I have a lot more control over it about how much ink is applied than you're going on with a really super wet applicator. The applicator in this case is just a wadded up paper towel. Okay, so you can see that where I'm building up that tone of blue in there, but I'm not darkening the falls and everything like that. Okay. All right, getting a range of values in the colors that I'll be applying with colored pencils on here. That'll be in the greens, blues, and browns. Kind of earthy tones, of course. Doesn't always have to be this color scheme or something like that. You can do a sunset scene or something like that, and they're warm tones, you know, golds, oranges, reds, that type of thing. But in this case, I'm going with the colors that have already kind of been established here. So a little bit of a warm green on the rocks to kind of liven up those rocks. Yeah, it could be lichen or something like that, or it could just be a color that's added to kind of add a little bit of continuity between the grassy area down below and those rocks up above. All right, so colored pencils are, you know, we might think of them as opaque, but they're really more translucent, okay? Especially with the way that I use them. I'm just adding kind of thin layers of colored pencils. And the semi-gloss aspect of this cardstock allows for me to use pretty much as much, you know, as many colored pencil layers as I want to. You know, it's not going to take colored pencils as well as, you know, paper that's designed for colored pencils, you know, meaning papers that have a little bit more tooth to them, you know, and texture. But this texture on the semi-gloss papers is enough for, I don't know, you can probably get 5-6 thin layers of a colored pencil applied in there. Okay, so anyways, where I'm applying some of the tones with those browns and grays was in the shadow areas of those rocks, okay? Going in with the colored pencil here now. In areas that I couldn't get in really strategically and kind of in a detailed manner with that wadded up paper towel. You know, that doing something like that is a lot easier with a colored pencil, you know, using that sharp tip like that. Okay, so falling water, I really love to add in kind of some splatter painting in the form of kind of a splashy, misty base to the waterfalls. You can't really see it here. Sorry, couldn't zoom in a little bit more, but see where I'm kind of pointing my finger? That's where I've splashed a lot of that white paint into those areas, and it kind of gives the waterfalls a little bit more movement and certainly texture, as well as illumination, because it is white paint, okay? Adding in a little bit of wildflowers down into that meadow down there, adding a little bit more texture into the water. At this point in time, if you're stamping anything out over the top of colored pencil, you pretty much have to use StazOn to give yourself a nice, crisp impression. I guess you can use some types of pigment ink too, but media that's been applied over wax, you know, you really want it to stick, so something like StazOn is a really good choice for that if you're going to do something over the top of, you know, your colored pencils as far as impressions go. Okay, adding in some little wildflowers with this pink 0.7 millimeter acrylic paint pen. It's an extra fine. I'm adding some of these little pink dots over the rocks. I don't know, it doesn't represent like pink dots. Oh my god, the rocks are pink or something like that. It just gives it a little bit of color continuity with those pink flowers down below. Okay, and adding in some white pigment ink. It'll give it a nice textural kind of balance to all of the sharp impressions out there. Nice crisp impressions, nice crisp texturing with the acrylic paint pen. But now, going on with 100% cotton ball with a little bit of white pigment ink onto the scene, I'm adding this little mist at the base of the waterfalls to give it a kind of a softer texture, and it becomes kind of an illuminated area, adding in some of that white pigment ink on the top portion of the scene to make it look farther back in the distance. And there you have it. There's my little kind of waterfall stack of an area that we used to go hiking in when we were kids, whenever we'd go to the Sierras every summer. It doesn't necessarily look like it, but close enough. Okay, thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it.